Hi, it's Mr. Baumgarten here with a video to look at reading in text files in Python. A text file is just a plain old regular unformatted file. It's the same kind of file that Visual Studio Code creates by default. It's also the kind of file that you can create in Notepad. So it's not a Word document, it's not something with formatting in it. It's just plain regular text. So you can see here I've created a file which I've called exciting.txt. And I have saved it in the same folder as my code. If you put it in a different folder, you're going to have to, when you give it the file name, you're going to have to give it a reference to where to find that file relative to the folder that your code is running from. But the way we read files is we use the open command in Python. But we're going to create a new type of block for this as well. We're going to use what's called the with block. And the with block is where we're specifying that we are wanting the indented code to do something with whatever it is the with block creates, hence with. So the way this is structured is we say with, and then we give it our Python command, which is going to create a variable for our file. So open, and the first parameter is simply the name of the file. If you're using VS Code, you can just right click on your file and say copy relative path and paste that in. Oops, it needs to get pasted into a string. And then the second parameter that I'm wanting to use is another string, and I'm just going to put the letter R in there to indicate I am wanting to open this file in read mode as opposed to opening it for writing. And then I say, okay, what variable do I want to assign this to? So I'm just going to call it F for my file, and I use the colon. And like any other Python line that ends in the colon, the next line is indented. And so I'm telling Python I want to do something with this open file, with this variable that I've just created called F. And if I hit F and hit the dot, we'll see that we get a variety of commands available to us. The most likely ones that VS Code thinks we're looking for are either write line, seek, close, read line, or read. So we're going to start with read. There's also a read lines command, which we can see somewhere down here. Yes. I want a variable to save all this into. So let's create a string called content and just say f.read. And since that's a function, I need my parentheses there, and then I can unindent because I'm now done using the file. And so once I unindent, Python will close the file for me, and I can print this. So now if I run, right, it is now outputting the content of my file for me. It's loaded all into a string for me. That's all well and good, but what if I want it to read in each individual line and give me a list of strings? Well, that's where you might just think, okay, that's where I can use this read lines command. But there's a slight problem with this, which I'm going to quickly demonstrate. So this does indeed read it in as a list of strings. And so we can see here we've got our square parentheses, our square brackets. And we've got the first string, comma, and then the second string, and then the third string. But we've got this /n here, and this /n represents the end of line character. So Python hasn't stripped out the end of line characters for us when it's turned this into a list. And so if I was to say print, do a for loop for every line inside content, and get it to print those individual strings, for line in content, we're actually going to get double line breaks, and that's because Python is printing out the line return that was inside the file as well as the regular one at the end of the print. So when I want to load in a text file as a list of strings, we generally don't actually use the read lines command. We stick with the read command, and then we tell it to split on lines. Right, so split lines, and that is going to actually get us to behave the way that we want. Right, so now I get a list of 3 strings, You can see there that there is no line return inside the list when I print it out. And when I then get it to loop through individual lines, it just prints them out one line at a time. And we can do other things such as just normal list operations, find out how many lines were inside this list, and it tells us that there are 3 lines. Finally, if we want to do something a little creative, we could import in the time library, and we can load up some song lyrics. And so for every line inside this list, I want to print the line, and then maybe I get Python to pause for a second to give me a second to read out the relevant line of the song. And so I could hit run for this. We're no strangers to love, you know the rules and so do I. A full commitment is what I'm thinking of. You wouldn't get this from any other guy. I want to tell you just how I'm feeling, got to make you understand, never going to give you up, never going to let you down. Who would have thought you would have been rickrolled by Mr. Baumgarten in a Python programming video? This is Mr. B, signing out.